So I'll be sharing today from personal reflections, basically like prompts. And what was this inspired by? The Lubavitcher rebbe, who passed away in 1994, there was a video that played. His headquarters were at 770 from his father-in-law, the previous Lubavitcher rebbe. And a couple years ago, the end of 2022, I saw a video, but they often have videos. It's a famous video. It was, they play videos at 770 now, after Havdalah, after Saturday night, Shabbos is over, after the ritual with the fire, the spices, and the wine. And they played this, the weekend where there was the Kinnis HaShluchim, which is the gathering of all the emissaries of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He sent out emissaries. So they showed the Rebbe after the stroke that he had. He was all red, he was white, his eyes were bulging. One hand seemed very tightly held and the other was kind of jerking where it had been able to be smooth before. And the same with his neck, kind of jerky. His face was thinner. It was gaunt. And he moved his head in an edgy, erratic way. Sometimes he was nodding. His hair was sparse. And he had a white t-shirt under a kapata. Kapata being the overcoat, where he used to have a white button-up shirt before. And it was, obviously, as I said, after he had the stroke, he motioned and they kind of took him back in. And he was on the balcony. So where did this come from? The idea of wholeness is very similar to holiness. So I started thinking, what's beyond words? Like at this point, he wasn't communicating with his words. I looked into myself, hand motions, body positioning, the arms and legs gestures, and then with the voice, when there's no words, tone, stuttering, loudness, wails, sounds and calls, and then also facial expressions, glancing, steering, smiles, squinting, and then other noises that can come from the throat, coughing, gagging, clearing the throat, laughing, and of course eye contact or lack of, and then there's singing, melody, tunes, humming, whistling, and finally affection or touch. So, I was starting to think a lot of this is about energy, like expression, right? So then I was thinking, what makes me, instead of, what turns me off? When something's turned on, sort of, that's kind of this idea that there's something beyond, right? There's something beyond the words being transmitted. And that's turned on. What happens when the transmission is turned off? What causes me not to want to connect or to be open or to be whole? So I wrote a list and I just didn't judge it. When someone doesn't ever ask how I am or if I need anything and doesn't make the natural effort required to connecting with someone. When someone prefers to suffer more than to, just to cause me suffering or confusion or just to not let me see them in a certain light where I seem, happier, more blessed. Than I am. Someone who's not gentle with me or kind when they don't need anything and shows their selfish coldness. Someone who needs the upper hand even though they get me to like them enough to be the one to reject. Someone who plays stupid to corner me, where they want to avoid their own agendas that they convenienced me for. Someone with dirty fingernails and cuticles or hands, and I think, someone's drooling over themselves or their lap, their surroundings. Someone misleading me about their consciousness, awareness, mindfulness, and lifestyle instead of accepting where they're at. Someone who's rude till I back off instead of just communicating their need for space respectfully. Someone who flirts with another woman in front of me while saying they're only interested in their shidduch. And then underneath this, I felt was all about false identity. So holiness is about not falsehood, right? It's wholeness. So, seeing how I do and respond when I want to hide will give me more compassion for the human condition, the conditioning of the human. And then I can see why others, especially those who may be in survival mode, right? Hiding is fight or flight. Flight could also be hiding at that moment, or those frequently activated due to their historical conditioning, including the learned helplessness, which is like freeze. There's a third of fight or flight. Sometimes when you can't do either, you do freeze. And to avoid being surprised, because it represents being like caught. So they're just so rigid that you can't surprise them. They're always on guard. By staying on top of everything, preparing for everything and anything, and solving problems reactively to prevent things getting even less predictable, retreating into their shell because of, like, if they can't actually freeze or run away, they run away into their self. Because of wanting to be their self, and then protecting the false identity. So who do you run away into? You have something on the outside. That's the shell. That's the false identity. So when we want to hide, we have a shell. And it seems like a protection, at all costs, we might protect this false identity, cementing it even further. The self may watch, unable to escape its being imprisoned. But freedom comes in being the true arising self, immanent presence, larger than life, beyond any label. See this idea of beyond any word. Word is a label, right? Always having a new portion to come. It's forever changing. So we cannot digest or filter for value because it mistakes artificial as real from the get-go. And it will idealize, this is the false identity life, and it will idolize, masking weakness. So, from the outside it looks like I'm strong, but meanwhile I feel so weak. So there's this now idealizing having an image, a false image, versus embracing the sensitivities and honoring the vulnerabilities bravely, like looking afraid and saying to ourselves, I'm so strong, I'm so afraid, and I'm still showing up, which is, a foundation, versus the false identity is faulty. It has faulty values in the foundation. And I'm going to finish with this idea of commitment. So it's there's commitment to meaning, or there's commitment to biology, there's commitment to heavenliness. So, there's 3 layers here. There's what are we committing to? As a container for meaning, like I am here to be, what's meaningful for someone could be a mother. They're here to be a mother. They're committed to being a mother. Or the biology, if I'm committed to being healthy. So I'm committed, like I'll give up things or I'll focus on it. And then there's heavenliness. I'm committed to being, having integrity because I believe, in the true spirit. So, whatever else is at the cost. So commitment, in an idea is like, and there's other ways of this. There's like the idea of the actual, we're committing to the actual, or we could be committing to the expectations, or we can commit to the potential. So we could say, the potential here is I can make $1 million. I'm going to commit to that. Or we could say I commit to this real life. This is my budget. I'm going to commit to living within my means. Or you could say expected. I'm expecting to make a certain amount of money. I'm going to commit to, certain things based on these expectations that I'll make it. And then we have commitment to the self, which is, I'm committing to be good company for myself. We could say I'm committing to a partner. I'm going to be good company for them. And then there's this idea of shared. I'm committing to the holder for all who's involved. And there's also this idea of like falsehood has no legs versus staying power. What has staying power? Something that's true. So there's these renovations of the superficial, of the scaffold. This is happening outside. But there is this idea that, we think about Hanukkah, the holiday of Hanukkah. The Jews found this untainted seal cruse of oil for the great priest, which we each have inside of us, the high priest. It's a refined place that can always fit through the eye of the needle. It's freestanding in completeness, even just for a moment. It's always accessible, and this is the idea of the permanence, Hashem being, our creator, our source, God, eternal, and this is able to be through life pattern or style. It's life itself, following the pattern of life. It's life itself, styling itself in life. We do need to accept timing often because it's, that it's best for the allness. Sometimes we're committed to something that's not happening the way that we want. Something that may have not happened yet. And it's a lot about the big picture. That's why I keep mentioning wholeness, holiness. That it's, there's this wholeness of life and interconnectedness of all life forms. There's a holiness in the allness, knowing, I'm not dead yet, as far as I know. And this idea that the self, the false self, may wish for death. There are people who are so entrenched in this false self, they become suicidal. It's seeing and wishing for death as a choice to end the aspected identity consciously, which I cannot access again, So it's this false identity that's just a part. We do learn that these hidden inside scars can haunt us the same way the outside scars stick out of our appearance. So if somebody has like a massive like physical injury and it sticks out, this is what is happening on the inner scars, not physically, but the inner self, the identity. And we can soothe and accept it first fully in order to challenge this identity. We're going to inflame it. And then how do we deal with the inflammation? Sometimes some tissue has to be, there's many things that could happen. Sometimes some tissue has to be healed. It's a natural healing. It's designed to heal itself when all the gateways are open as much as they should, as much as they should, when they should. And it happens naturally. It's like, I want to think about like when someone strains a muscle and there's a bounce back period. It takes sometimes 4 weeks, or it breaks down the resilient buoyancy that there's this long-term masking that causes damage. For example, if someone has constantly like a shoe that really doesn't fit and it's causing the foot to be in a different way, it's long-term masking the fact that the person has pain, and then they're wearing these shoes that and actually could cause damage. So the resilient buoyancy, which is naturally bouncing back, isn't allowing to process. But give it a few weeks and it will bounce back. But it is impossible, we have to remember, to regenerate in the presence of the inflammation. So the pain and the injury is felt of the regeneration. It triggers inflammation of regeneration, which is necessary for repairing the signals, for the repair signals themselves to come and fix. So we have to first stop the damage. And we also have to shut the door on a fire, even if we know it doesn't actually make the fire go out. It just makes it stop spreading. So remember, this is about commitment. So when we paralyze the pain receptors, it doesn't actually connect the paths or clear the blockages from. So this is like the idea that when you take painkillers, you are making it so the pain receptors can give you the information, but it doesn't clear the pain and it doesn't connect what's been broken. So is there anything to rely on, even humans? This is the idea that it comes out psychologically, the identity itself healing the wound. And we have to ask ourselves some questions. For example, when we know that some resilient patterns without being watered can last more than 40 days, we're going to actually have to like starve them. They're like weeds that are growing, but they eventually will die. And we know every child dies. Every child who's born is destined to die. Every transgression which makes a gap, transgress it, has the inherent functionality to plant a seed in the hole, cover it up, now it's hiding in plain sight, the potentially powerful, the untapped reservoir, the dark light, and then it grows high up above the baseline level, even before it went down to a lower place. So this is what the idea of the utility of tshuva, the return to the real self, goes even higher. So when we transgress, it's like a place to plant the seed, even deeper, made a hole, then we refill it, and then that seed can grow from a very low place. We made the gap. First the baseline was here, then we made a gap and we were lower. And then we plant a seed there, and then it grows higher than the baseline. So this is, some patterns need, this idea of, like I said, some patterns will grow for a long time without even being watered for 40 days, while others need very frequent and potent investments. So we can look at this as like, the questions of like, am I ready to commit as much as I am committed to? Whatever it is. Am I capable of trusting anyone to sign up for a mission with me to save the world together? These are like developing compassion for the human condition, the identity. And it's not about not necessarily when we're, like sometimes it's not we're not necessarily able to recognize our divine self from from a parallel universe. It's like, here, the form can be different from the extraterrestrial, celestial self. And and by saying that, we have to compare our expectations to the learned information. So this is about, let's say we learn people often feel powerless, and when they have an opportunity for power, they will grab it, and they won't always think it through. So I might, have a expectation that, people will help me. But then the information I learn is that people are grabbing the power they could get. So, this minimizes free energy from the sensory input, which checks for the wrongs and corrects back. But like we said, the certain ideals that we have about the human condition are going to be uprooted or transgressed. But a deeper seed can be growth can come from that. It can cause distress if we refuse to adjust our expectations, but we also don't want the wrong perspective to view from and project onto life in the ongoing immersive, because it does affect us in all areas. So I'm going to stop here, and may we all, for the sake of, and I'm saying this is all for the sake of committing to the true identity in holiness beyond words. And I'll say I wish I never had to wait for someone to get back to me when I'm waiting, because I really want what I'm asking for, and it seems to lie in their hands. And I hate having to ask or beg or persuade, because then I can be rejected or even degraded or humiliated. So this is sort of an example of just giving you a nugget. Like when we're adjusting our expectations, we have to see, what are we wishing for? And that's also often we get our wish. We don't, you know what I mean? So I'll stop here, and I wish us all to have wholeness and holiness beyond words, completely turned on to our true identity and committed.